Hi, Erica. How are you?
Rachel, how are you? Nice to see you.
Doing great. So I wanted to start by with a movie like this, I really like how it is its own thing while still tied in its own way to the original franchise. How important was it for you guys when you're building something that does have its own dedicated fan base to make it its own kind of comedy and story at the same time?
I think we all went into this movie with exactly what you just said. We wanted to honor the original movie. We all think it's a perfect movie. We loved it, really. I mean, it was one of those movies where we all have our own stories of when we saw it the first time, what it made us feel like, the movies that it was parodying, the TV shows. I think for us, the idea of remaking this it had its own challenges because we weren't trying to fix something that was broken. We were trying to make something fresh that lived in a similar world, but was its own thing. So it was important, and we hope we did it without, undermining what came before us.
Yeah, and it is one of those that, like, I remember watching the Leslie Nielsen one growing up, and watching this, it feels more like my kinda comedy that I ended up liking as I got older,
Right.
partially because I'm a Lonely Island fan, but also, like, looking at the slate of comedies that you've produced, I love those kinda comedies versus the oddball comedies of the '80s, and I like how this kinda marries the modern comedy with that. What was the biggest challenge, though, to, like, I don't wanna say pitch this, but it is, we don't have these comedies anymore. They are rare to actually have a comedy that's going into the theaters and people get to sit and watch on the big screen. What was the biggest challenge of, like, convincing people that there was something to do with the Naked Gun franchise again and that we could have those kinda comedies in theaters?
It was it the studio at Paramount and all of our executives were definitely looking to try and figure it out. So the idea of Liam Neeson playing the leading part, the starring role in this is how we came to this. That was Seth's sort of secret sauce. He had seen it with his relationship with Liam in previous movies that he directed that Liam was in. They had talked about it. They had made it, it was something that was in, he knew that it could work, the idea of Liam Neeson doing it. So that was already kind of baked in when we came to Paramount with the idea. I think the final piece of this was what you just mentioned, which is Akiva Schaffer, because his special brand of comedy mixed with Fuzzy Door and Seth's special brand of comedy and what already existed in the original Naked Guns, I think gives it exactly what you're talking about, which is this, hopefully, this more modern version of something that is still a parody.
Well, and I wanted to ask you too, was there ever a conversation because this is in the trailer, so it's obviously like it's not a spoiler, but it is, the children of the original Naked Gun crew all working at police squad. Was that always something you guys wanted to do as like an honoring of the original movie, or did that kind of come through the process of working with Paramount and figuring out exactly what you wanted this movie to look like?
It was the process of writing with Akiva, Dan, and Doug, who wrote the
Mhm.
script. Um, because there were some things that we needed to sort of push into the movie in a real way. One was, this idea that it was Frank Drebin Jr., not Frank Drebin. So it was his son. We were making it was a separation between the two things and between the two movies, or the three movies and then this movie. Um, that the idea of OJ was a conversation that came up with pretty much everybody you talked to about the movie was, what are you going to do about OJ? So they were cleverly sort of armed with a bunch of ideas going in. And I think that this idea of paying homage to the ones that came before was just a brilliant solution to a potential problem that we knew we had to solve. And so, when we saw that OJ line play on the day, it was funny, but seeing it in an audience it's just like, it's so surprising and so much fun.
Well, it's funny because I saw the trailer at CinemaCon first, laughed out loud as did like everyone in the press section was laughing at that. And then I was gonna ask you about that because it has become a thing where everyone is like, that is genuinely one of the funniest things. I laugh no matter how many times I've seen it at this point. Is that like reassuring to you guys? Seeing how it's like, and having seen the movie, I'm like, that's not even the funniest part. It is just genuinely like one of those things you just keep laughing at. Is it reassuring to, like, see that people are reacting to something like that in a trailer, not even the whole movie yet?
Rachel, I'm so happy because we were so, you just don't know.
Mhm,
The nervousness around making something that hasn't been made in over a decade is hard. And in the theaters, and hoping that it hits the theaters in the right way, and hoping that a generation of kids that have not grown up on these movies will think this is funny. I think all of those things were on our minds. I think the marketing team at Paramount knew exactly what the movie was from the very beginning. The first time we saw the teaser, we were like, oh my God, this is exactly the right tone.
and I wanted to ask you, how excited are you for different audiences, as you said, to get to kind of interact with the Naked Gun? Because it was like that was my dad and my brothers, and then they introduced me to the Naked Gun. So it was like I'm 33, so it was like
Right.
even like a younger millennial was kind of like at the tail end of not really knowing the Naked Gun franchise. So how exciting is it to have this go out and have entirely new audiences get to kind of understand the weird parody that these movies were and now what this one is presenting to them.
Honestly, if that happens, that is the goal, right? Is that the younger generation of moviegoers and movie lovers will see this as something for them. Because I think that, it's something that hasn't been in the theaters in a long time.
Mhm. I agree. And for the last question, I want to ask, you know, this whole movie as a whole has like all of the little gags and jokes that it's meant to, and like the buttons just being up and down. I'm trying to be vague because I don't want people to know, but the
Right?
buttons being up and down to me, I was like, that is so funny because it could have been something more serious, and it's not. It's just like up down. What for you is the part that you were like, "I can't wait for everyone to just get to sit in there and see X, Y, and Z because they think they're gonna love it."
I think that the thing that I was most curious about, because I thought it was one of the funniest things that I had read originally in the screenplay, and that I saw in my head so clearly, was the snowman scene.
Yeah. Well,
So, and again, we don't want to give anything away, so we're not talking about it.
uh,
Um, but it was one of those sequences where everything about it sort of just hit me in a way that I could not stop laughing.
when it also is, paying, as you said, homage to the
Yes.
original, how they used to do weird things like that, and you were like, "Where are we going with this?" And it's just so funny to then, right after hear the voiceover of Liam Neeson, where you're like, "Oh, that was all real? Cool, got it." Yep.
Well, it's very Naked Gun, but it's also very Lonely Island. You
Yeah,
know,
and
it
that
seemed
would
like it
yeah.
was perfectly suited for the movie in that way.
And I'm 100% asking Keeve if it was based on the movie Jack Frost starring Michael Keaton, because that is where my brain went watching that entire sequence. I was like, "It's Michael Keaton in the movie Jack Frost."
It
Uh,
absolutely had connected tissue for that, from that movie. And so when you do interview him, you will talk to him about that.
I can't wait because I think about the movie all the time. But thank you so much. I loved this. I can't wait for like so many people in my life who love The Naked Gun to get to see this movie because I loved it and I know they will. And so thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you, Rachel.
it. Of course, have a great one. How are
Hi. Good. I was trying to see if it was a movie poster behind you, but it is not. Or maybe it is. Oh, that one. That was blocked. What is
you?
that?
Inside Llewyn Davis.
Uh-huh.
And then that's the
Oh,
Broadway.
it's Sing Street. It is
Yeah.
Sing Street. Yeah. It
Uh,
got into better focus. All of a sudden, it clocked in.
I moved around. So to start, I love that this marries both modern
There are
humor.
modern humans in it.
There, that is true. But modern humor a little bit of like your history with comedy and what the Naked Gun always has been all into one movie. How important was it for you to not only make this as like a nod to the original franchise, but also kind of give it to a new audience and make it fresh and new and not just a carbon copy of what came before?
Well, I'm glad you feel that that's what it is, because that certainly was that was the whole challenge, right? That's the whole thing. And I mean, so it was the most important. That's it. Because I love the first Naked Gun.
Mhm.
It's like I'm never gonna be able to make this movie better than that movie. That movie is perfect, and Leslie Nielsen is irreplaceable. He's Leslie Nielsen, he's one of a kind. So the
Mhm.
only thing we could do is try to honor it and carry on its legacy and spirit, but try to make something new. And it's exactly why Liam in the beginning of the movie is, when he's praying to the picture of Leslie Nielsen, says, "I want to be just like you, but at the same time be completely different and original." And that's the whole thesis statement of the movie, right? That's the whole idea. And yeah, so even when they came and approached me about making Naked Gun, I was like, no, because I can't. There's no room to make it better. But when they said Liam was interested, that's when I was like, oh, this can be about the next 30 years of movies from 1990 till now.
Mhm.
So I saw how we could all this room, all the untapped genre tropes and references and the way we would film it, and how Liam would be funny the way Liam is funny, the way he's funny in his cameo in Ted 2, or funny in Life is Short, or Life's shit. I don't want to miss say how he's with the title. You know what I'm talking about? It's
Yes,
the
I don't remember.
Ricky
Yeah,
Gervais, Stephen Merchant, Warwick
uh,
Davis.
I
What?
couldn't tell you the name of it right now
All
because I
right,
don't.
well, cut that part out. But how funny he was in the Ricky Gervais, Stephen Merchant, Warwick Davis show, when he did a cameo in that show, where you see that his taken action movie persona can be used for comedy, and the fact that he hadn't used it very often kind of
Mhm.
was an untapped resource.
When you mentioned references, I talked to Erica and I made this as a joke, and then she goes, "No, that was a reference." And I was like, "Oh," and I was like, "When I talk to Keeve, I'm bringing it up then." So I wrote it down so I didn't forget. I don't know if you can read that it is the movie
Oh
Jeff
yeah,
Ross starring Michael Keaton.
yes, yes, of course.
Because I think about that movie all the time, and so I made that joke. She goes, "No, that was a reference." So I wanted to know, how was it to get to figure out like what you wanted to reference with a movie like this? Because it is a parody. Obviously, like cop movies are at the top of the brain, but you get to reference a lot of different things that you wouldn't necessarily think like instantly when you're thinking of either a cop parody or even just Naked Gun as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, for you, I mean, the genre of detective noir, or just straight up spy action thriller. Those are, I just named six genres that are among my favorite genres of movie. So in a way, I had been studying to make this movie for the last 20 years, just because it's the kind where even if I know one's going to be not the best one of it, I'll still hit play on it all the time. And a friend and I, during lockdown, started watching every James Bond movie in order, just because I had never done that and didn't know if, and I knew there were ones I had never seen, and I was like, let's just watch them through. And that was well before Naked Gun, before I had any idea I'd be making this. And we also watched like 25 Charles Bronson movies for no reason, just starting at Death Wish. I watched all the Dirty Harrys, and and then in modern life also, just anytime a new John Wick or a Jack Reacher, these are
Mhm.
just things I like. So I had been I just the moment this came up and it was Liam, I had watched all those Liam Neeson movies since Taken. So I immediately could see why I was excited about it. And this movie's all about identifying tropes, right? Like, the guy who gets a gun pointed but grabs the gun and disassembles it and throws it on the floor, and you go, ooh, yes, we all have seen that now a lot of times, so it's very ripe for this. So I don't want, without ruining anything for
Yeah.
your people watching this or whatever, uh but then we figure out, like, all right, well, what's the ways to take that three steps further? Or
Mhm.
Mission Impossible with this, that's in the trailer, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, right, but what's the silly version of that? Or Mission Impossible with the walls falling over. Again, not to ruin anything, but so it's identifying tropes, and that just takes watching those movies and going, right, they always do say that or whatever. And then again, I don't know when you're going to publish, so I wouldn't want to ruin any of the Jack Frost thing because it's one of
It
the
was just simply that is one of those insane
well,
movies that I think about all the time. And so
yes,
that made me think about it. And then it was like, oh no, that was the point.
the killer snowman trope, which is not really a trope, even though there was the Michael Fassbender movie, The Snowman. What's
Can't
funny
remember.
about that one is that I've never seen it, but I wrote that sequence, but I have seen the trailer. And for years, I've known this movie exists. And he looks, there's also two of them called Jack Frost, and one is CG, and one is the,
The puppet,
whatever,
like,
it's a
yeah.
puppet, but like a mascot puppet, a wearable puppet. Uh, and so it was in my brain when I wrote this. I was like, oh, and we'll make a puppet like that one I've seen from Jack Frost. Yes, for
Oh,
sure.
I love that. Well, and there's one thing I want to ask, but it is a spoiler, so I won't ask it. But I do want to know how you felt when, like, I remember I saw it at CinemaCon, the trailer, and when the OJ Simpson thing happened, everyone was laughing their asses off.
Yeah, you
And
can
then
spoil things that are in the trailer.
well, yeah, but the thing I don't want, I realize is a spoiler that I did want to ask. I pivoted. But
Okay.
the OJ thing, I realized that like slowly but surely everyone kept bringing up how it didn't matter how many times they saw it, they just kept laughing at it. And I agreed, but having seen the movie now, I'm like, that wasn't even like top 5 funniest moments for me. So if people felt that way with the trailer, like they're gonna have a grand old time watching this because that was like funny, but not even like the best that's in there. How did it feel for you though, as a creative, like seeing that happening online and seeing people keep bringing up like, yeah, that joke still is funny, even though I've seen it now, however
Well,
many times I've watched
that's very nice, and thank you to the people saying that. Uh, yeah, I mean, it's awesome, right? You're writing these jokes and then you film them and then you edit it together and then you're just hoping that people like them. So
it.
the moment they do, whether it was in one of our like friends and family screenings or test screenings, or then in the first teaser, it's a huge relief. And then, as soon as that teaser, all the jokes in that teaser were almost the things me and Dan Greger and Doug Mann, the two fellas I wrote the movie with, they were things we had written in our first week of writing because they were answering the big questions of what would a new Naked Gun feel like, what
Mhm,
would it look like, how does it work with Liam Neeson, and then when I would talk to friends and go, oh yeah, we're thinking about writing Naked Gun, they go, what do you do about OJ? Those are like the big questions, and
mhm,
so like making Frank Jr. and paying respect to Leslie and to the original movies was really important, and saying to the audience that loves those movies, don't worry, those movies are still those movies. You can still go
mhm,
watch them. We're not doing anything with them. We're just, and we like them too. This is something new. He's not going to be doing an impression of Leslie. He's a different guy. And then showing what it looks like, that I have the way I was trying to shoot it and make it sound like closer to, that bank one is, modeled loosely after the Dark Knight bank robbery,
mhm.
just in terms of, and a little bit Point Break bank robberies, of me just trying
Yeah.
to make it look like epic 90s, not that Dark Knight was 90s, but like epic, cool, shot on film 90s bank robberies. Um, but that also answers a question of like, are you going to make it feel throwback in a certain comedy way or more like the genre?
Mhm.
And then OJ. And so I'm just, I was very relieved when it seemed like the audience went like, we liked those choices. Those are the right choices. And I went, oh, thank God, because the whole rest of the movie is based on those choices.
Well, and it made me so happy because, like, I grew up with these movies. My dad and my brother loved them, and it passed on to me. So my brother's 43 and I'm 33. So it was like okay, here I'm passing this comedy on. And
Yep.
so watching this, it was the coolest thing to text my brother and be like, don't worry, it's really good. So thank you so
Well, I
much for
appreciate
talking with
that.
me. Well, of course, and thank you so much for talking with me. It really means a lot, and I can't
Of
wait for
course.
everyone else to get to see it.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And thanks for liking it.
Of course, have a great one.